Liz, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us and share a little bit about your story. Now, I know you've had the questions in advance, so you've had a little bit of a chance to prepare. But to kick off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I grew up and worked in Hitchin in Hertfordshire. I met John in London in 1989, which is 31 years ago. Amazing. We've lived in Devon for 24 years. So I'm not sure that we do qualify as Devonians yet, but it's quite a long time. I ran a publishing company for 12 years in Hitchin, and we got married there when we were both 30. We now run an affordable housing company or group of companies which we operate from our office at home. I deal with the money side of things and the day-to-day management of the properties. I'm a deacon of this church. I'm on the board of an organisation which connects ex-offenders with mentors, and I'm the bookkeeper for the Open Door Centre in Exmouth. We don't have any children by choice, but we do have Danny, our 3-year-old Jack Russell.
It is more hassle than any children put together, I think.
No problem.
Yeah. It's also worth saying, for those of you who don't know, Liz is our church treasurer and does an amazing job in trying to keep all the finances in order. But she's the person to get in touch with, especially if you want to make a large donation to the church.
Good advert.
Yeah, she wanted me to say that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to know Jesus?
I grew up without any church background at all, really. I do recall going to Sunday school a few times, but not regularly. But I was always quite curious about matters of faith as I became an adult, especially when we were getting married in a church. It sort of, I think it triggered something in me that I needed to find out a bit more about that. We had a number of friends who were Christians. And inevitably they would be grilled by us every time we met with them. They were always really patient, and what struck me was that they always had an answer to all my questions. So that was very interesting. We spent some time travelling around Australia in the early 90s and settled in Tasmania for about 6 months. And while we were there, my mother was supposed to be visiting us, having stayed with my sister in Sydney. And we were due to go to one of the historic sites, which was an old prison colony called Port Arthur. However, she changed her plans and we postponed our visit to the following weekend. The weekend we should have been there, a man went on the rampage with a shotgun and killed over 30 people at Port Arthur, and including the people that we would have been staying with at the bed and breakfast. And it would have been happening at the time we would have been having breakfast with them. Wow. So this was a completely horrendous and shocking incident, as we knew the owners of the bed and breakfast really well, and we just kept saying we should have been there. So we were devastated, along with all of Tasmania, that something like this could have happened. We were planning to go home shortly after that anyway. We were going to go via Washington DC to stay with my cousin, Tim, who is a Christian, but was always a bit annoying in that he would always be talking about Jesus. So you could take him, we decided we could stand a couple of days of that. So we arrived on the Saturday and we were leaving on the Monday on our way home. After having dinner together, Tim inevitably ended up talking about Jesus and the impact he had in their lives. And all of a sudden it made absolute perfect sense to me. And we both wanted what they all had. And I think with hindsight, the massacre was so horrible and dramatic that it had to be something that shocking to make me stop and question my whole life. It took something that big to make me look at myself and take stock, and for me to let God in, really. As you can imagine, Tim was a bit thrown suddenly, but he talked us through the process of committing our lives to Jesus. Both John and I at the same time, which in hindsight, we know it was a complete blessing that it happened for both of us at the same time. We also didn't really understand why Tim was so emotional about us taking this step. So we were baptised in Honiton a year later. And for me, the commitment made when we gave our lives to the Lord was the beginning of the journey. My baptism was confirmation to me and a public declaration of understanding of what I'd actually done.
Wow, there's a lot more to talk about there, but we'll let people get in touch with you to find out more. Fast forwarding to now, obviously you've both been Christians for some years now, and I know have been in various churches and served in various ways, as you were saying just now. But what does that ongoing relationship with Jesus mean to you today?
Yes. Well, I think I have to look back a bit and just, I think from the moment that we became Christians, I know that I've changed when I look back. So I'm much less self-focused and much more outward looking. And one of my favourite scriptures says that I'm a new creation, the old has gone and the new has come. And I can honestly say that looking back, I am a new person living a new life. So when I look back over the last 20 years of being a Christian, it's much easier to see what God has done in hindsight, as it is sometimes difficult to see what he's doing at the time. But I would say that one of the very tangible things that God has given me over the years is compassion and a heart for injustice of any sort, and for people who are excluded from society. For most of my life up to my 30s, I was very self-assured and confident. I was an independent businesswoman and I felt I didn't need for anything really. Looking back, I didn't really care very much about anyone else. My life revolved around me, and then John came into my life, and my life then revolved around John and me. I was very inward looking, which I think a lot of people are these days. I felt I had it all. I didn't need anything else. Compassion certainly wasn't a character trait I would have associated with me. As I said, once I became a Christian, this changed for me, and I started to be an outward looking person. I mentioned about the prison thing. I was a volunteer with prison chaplaincy for a very good number of years. And I'm certain that this was a God nudging experience, because I've been watching Songs of Praise. They had a story about caring for ex-offenders, which is an Alpha initiative. And it really struck a chord with me. I thought it was really interesting. Then I went to Stoneleigh Bible Week, and one of the talks was about prison ministry. So I thought, oh, that's very interesting. And then I spoke to somebody who was a prison volunteer, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Anyway, we moved into a little village outside Dorchester. And on one of my visits into town, I was looking for a parking space, turned a corner and was almost slapped in the face by this enormous prison. And at that point, I thought, somebody's trying to tell me something. So I then had many years as part of the prison chaplaincy in Dorchester, and then subsequently in Exeter, encountering the most interesting of men, excuse me, and having a real heart for them with all their personal issues, let alone their crimes. But I do believe that God's been actively working in my life, even before I knew him personally. And there are plenty of times in my life when I look back and I'm certain that he was at work, protecting me, steering me in the right direction, and keeping me on the right path with the decisions I've made. The certainty that God has it all under control is a real comfort and reassurance to me, because I don't need to worry anymore.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a pretty good place to finish. Liz, thank you so much for sharing that. And as we always do, we'd invite everyone to be praying for Liz and John, especially for Liz with the role that she does have within the church, trying to keep all the finances together. It's a bit of a headache, especially at the moment with COVID. But we know that they would appreciate your prayers very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.